We hear a lot about games before they launch in modern gaming, but sometimes games don't live up to the hype. Here are 5 of the most discussed titles that were supposed to be huge and turned out to be forgettable at best. Aliens: Colonial Marines was developed by Borderlands creator Gearbox Studios, who promised a faithful and dedicated recreation of many elements from the films. It's a shooter based in the Aliens universe, developed by the studio behind one of the biggest new franchises of the last decade. So what could go wrong? Everything, apparently. The game's launch was riddled with bugs that ranged from hit detection to collisions, weak AI that would often ignore players or hinder them in unintentional ways, poor scripting of the game's main scenario, ugly models for both characters and landscapes, and probably every other negative thing you can even think to say. It was so bad, there was even a lawsuit over supposed false promises, and the game's Metacritic scores sit around 45%, and publisher Sega paid out $1.25 million over the lawsuit. Spore was the brainchild of legendary designer Will Wright. The game dreamed big, letting you shepherd a species from its origin as a single-celled organism until it took to the stars. It promised nearly unlimited amounts of player freedom and creativity. What's not to love? After release, the game was hit with reviews accusing the individual portions being sluggish despite its 84% Metacritic score. It didn't help that the game's secure ROM DRM was widely reviled, leading to a $5 million class action suit and removal of the DRM in December 2008. After one expansion pack, the game was quietly left alone. Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning had a solid pedigree behind it. The studio Big Huge Games, well known for developing the Rise of Nations games, created the actual game, and the world was created by best-selling fantasy author R.A. Salvatore and designed by artist Todd McFarlane of Image Comics fame. An MMO sequel was in the works to boot. Unfortunately, Kingdoms of Amalur couldn't have possibly succeeded big enough to keep the troubled 38 studios afloat. While everything looked fine for the Big Huge Games owners at the time, the company's massive loan from the state of Rhode Island would have required the game to sell 3 million copies just to break even, compared to the 1.4 million it managed. A really impressive number for a brand new franchise, but whilst the game was solid, it could never match the immense sales figures needed to pay off 38 Studios' loan. Star Wars: The Old Republic has the name Star Wars smack bang at the start, and that is always a good sign. It's a cash cow. Before launch, the idea of BioWare taking the narrative of the critically acclaimed Knights of the Old Republic and turning it into an MMO sounded like the best of all worlds possible, an MMO with a serious story choices and fun group content. Though initial sales were brisk and media reception was positive, but subscriptions fell quickly, and common community criticism attacked what felt like a very narrow endgame completely divorced from storytelling. After an estimated $200 million cost to develop the game, the initial sales only reached $139 million before subscription fees. Far from becoming the next World of Warcraft success story, the game transitioned to a free-to-play model, with a solid player base still dwarfed by Blizzard's juggernaut title. Sid Meier's name, attached to Civilization Beyond Earth, meant 2 things: an homage to one of his cult classic games, Alpha Centauri, and the power of years of turn-based strategic pedigree. It promised to be bigger and wilder game than the previous Civilization titles. Now, many players and reviewers felt that the game was a reskinned version of Civ 5 with a few added science fiction doodads and less time spent figuring out how to make pots. The game struggled to reach the high regard of its predecessor, reaching 81% compared to Civ 5's 90%, and its tie-in to the mediocre Sid Meier's Starship did little to boost its impact. Steam user numbers indicated that Beyond Earth's player base is a tenth of the size of the significantly older Civ 5. Now, these games were all riding the hype train to success, yet all of them were derailed at one point or another. What are some of the other hyped games that wound up fizzling out? Let us know down in the comments below. As always, this has been Dash for Curse saying thanks for watching and enjoy the game.